Committee of the 24th of January. Welcome to this meeting. This meeting is held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcasts available through the Council's website. The Council is taken forward under the General Data Protection Regulations and Data Protection Act of 2018. We broadcast and record Council meetings to fulfil a public past obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with the Council's public policies available through the Council's website. Members of Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established rules protocols, including the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have received invites to the meeting. So with that, can I ask Diane to go through the apologies, the roll call and the declarations of interest?
We have apologies from Councillor Moran, if Councillor McCluskey substituting. We have convener will now move to an attendance roll call before proceeding to the declarations of interest. The following members please indicate if they are present at the meeting either in person or remotely. Councillor Armstrong.
In person.
Councillor Brennan.
Present in person.
Councillor Clockerty.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Daisley.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Law.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor McCluskey.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Maguire.
Present remotely.
Councillor McVeigh.
In chamber.
Councillor Quinn.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Wilson.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
I'd like to declare an interest in agenda item number 3. It mentions the Caddo Hill Community Gardens, in which I have a family association project.
He keeps mentioned in agenda item 4, so just putting the week in.
And again, Diane, both at the agenda number 5 and agenda item number 3 as a member of the Great Pleasure. Martin?
Just the same as Elizabeth, I would direct you to the Beacon.
Lynn?
Inverclyde Leisure from me as well. Thanks.
And with that, formality done, can we move to, first of all, what I would like to do is to have a member's request, which is taken as agenda item number 11. I would like to put that at the end of the meeting, so it will be agenda item number 6, and it's from Martin, if that's okay.
Yep.
And with that, can we move on to agenda item number 2, which is the revenue budget item, and Mary's going to take us through that. Mary?
Oh, can't hear me.
Mary, you're on mute just now, can't hear you.
Yes.
Thanks, Convener. This is the regular revenue monitoring report for the community side of the committee. The current projection as at the 31st of October is an overspend of £70,000. Further details are contained in the report in sections 3.3 Appendix E. An update on the committee's earmark reserves is contained at section 3.64. The committee are asked to note the current projection and note that the corporate director and heads of service will continue to review the committee's budgets to bring the projection back in line. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mary. All any questions from members? Okay. Nothing online and nothing in the room. I suppose the only question I would have, possibly to yourself, is just to speak about the shortfall in under 16 swimming and where that's going to be taken up under.
Yes, thank you. So as you remember, we had anticipated being able to contain the under 16 schooling for this year within the budget. But we haven't been able to, which I would say is a good news story because there has been an increase in swims. But this will go back through the budget process, through the CMT, the members budget working through the budget process to settle for next year. But we have taken the saving at this point in time, so the decision would have to be made about the budget position.
Yeah, thanks for reminding members of that. And if there's no questions, can we read the report?
Great.
And can we move to agenda item number 2? We have both Hugh here and Tony. Hugh, you want to start off on that one?
Good afternoon, everybody. This report gives you an update of the communities part of Education Scotland, education communities about the capital and asset related issues going on at the moment. The report gives you an update of where we are currently with a number of projects that's under the capital. Committee also, at the moment, the capital budget is 4.331 million. And the total projected spend, the committee is projecting to spend £1.62 million in 22 to 23, with a net slippage of 1.54, which is 47% of the overall budget. Within the appendix, it gives you an update of where we are with each of the projects. It's recommended that the committee looks at the current position and progress of specific projects of 22-25 capital budget. It's also asked that committee note that the proposal to replace a loan to Inverclyde Leisure for the mobile floor with a grant, which is considered at a meeting of the council in March 2023. And also within the note of the meeting is that there is a separate report relevant to indoor tennis facility, which will be later in the agenda. Just to give through some of the appendix within the report, the key thing at the moment for yourselves to understand and where we are with some certain pieces of projects. I'm delighted to say that the Lady Allen's Bowling Club is nearly complete. It should be complete by the end of the month, and we're working closely with the committee on final builds for that, but progress has fully been done with that. As you can see within the mobile floor, Eddie's put some details on where we are at the present moment with that, and obviously Eddie's here to have any more update on that. We're still on progressing on how to get to a completion date on that. Unfortunately, 3.9 within the community hub for King George VI, the 5th, is that the building work has delayed, major issues on the delayed, and that is expected to run late into 2023, so we are behind that. I'm also delighted to say that the Craig End facility is nearly there, the final budget to be agreed by the Lottery and the Regeneration Capital Fund, and the next one for the external the main shed again is, the Inverclyde shed is running slightly delayed due to a lack of materials arriving on site, but we're still estimating to be completed early 2023. As you're aware, we have been awarded £1.1 million to set up a new Park Lee branching out facility. At the present moment, this is now out to tender. The cost of this is still looking slightly over budget, but we're working very closely with the QS to try and get that budget on place. We need to have a final budget by the end of March 2023. On the asset transfers we see within the report, the working group is still continued, being chaired by Tony, and we continue to look at and work with partner agencies interested in asset transfers. Happy to take any questions in any report.
Thank you, Hugh. I'll open up to questions. I've got, I'll just do it the way I see it, so I'll just go that way. So Kirsty first of all, then Lynn, then James.
Thank you. I would like to ask specifically about the King George VI hub. Obviously it's saying that it's being delayed, but there's not anything in there about any additional cost that would be likely to be incurred, and if that will be covered by any contingencies you have in the project or through further Scottish Government Regeneration Capital Grant Fund.
Okay, I'll probably start on that and Eddie can maybe come in with that. At the present moment, we're not expecting, we have got a substantial amount of funding within the budget to support with it. It's in my understanding, and Eddie maybe will come in and clarify that, it's a major issue with pipe work underneath the facility. It's caused us a bit of concern, but that's now been resolved, and we at the present moment we're not indicating to go back to Scottish Government for any more funding. we have got quite a tight funding in place to do with it. We have increased some of costs from that. Anything else you want to find that?
Eddie?
Yeah, through you, convener. The main issues have been linked to pipework running through the site, but there's also still an issue with water ingress, and that's partly below ground and partly, we think, from an adjacent property. So there are still a few challenges there. There's quite a significant amount of work in the rear area, and it's quite a restricted area. So the programme has been affected by all these things. As Hugh says, we have a grant award. The project is 100% funded from the RCGF. We have contingencies within the contract, and obviously this delay will impact on that contingency. At the moment, I can't say that we can contain that overall delay within that contingency because it's too early in the project to say that. So there's still a risk that additional funding may be required. That's as much as we can say at the moment, and we just need to see how the project progresses over the next few months.
Thanks, Eddie. Percy?
Thank you.
Lynn?
Yeah, thanks. Just sort of 3 questions, if I may. The first one's on 3.8, the replacement of the waterfront pool. So I know, which is encouraging, that the installation is looking to be second quarter 2023. It's just to follow up a question that we've been had at the Gourock Community Council, where there's discussion over that the Gourock pool will be used when that installation takes place. I just wonder if you can clarify that that will be the case, and that will be during when it's opened naturally, and it's not before then. So will the Gourock pool be opened early because of those works? I don't know if you want my 3 questions before, or you want to do one in turn.
I'll do the first one, Vince.
Right, thanks.
Yeah, for yourself, convener. Yeah, we are aware of that, and we obviously we're waiting to get a timeline from the contractor about the start date. But we have discussed about opening up Gourock pool, but I think we need to wait until we get a final decision. Maybe Eddie's got more information than I have.
Yeah, through you, convener, we still don't have a defined programme for the floor. They're still working through some of the detail with the contractor and the specialist subcontractor, and that is in relation to the interface with the existing pool tank, because we're dealing with a pool tank construction that's obviously 20 odd years old. So until we have a defined programme, we can't say for sure whether or not it will naturally occur within the opening season of Gourock pool. The likelihood is that it will, given that we currently don't have an agreed timeline, and then there's a fair old lead-in period for construction of the floor itself.
Great, thank you.
Just on another point of that, what we're hoping to do is not close the. We'll probably want to close the swimming pool, but we'll obviously have the flues and the other part of the swimming pool still open at the time. So we'll only be closing one part of the pool. That's what we're hoping to do. So there still will be a facility at the waterfront opened, and we're looking at that more in depth.
Okay, great, thanks. So my next question's under 3.13. It's just the list of asset transfer potentials. It's just to see clarity on the sort of Morton in the community and the Martial Arts Academy. Is that purely land, or is that land and building?
For yourself, convener, that's looking at buildings and land if it's available, and we're having discussions with Morton in the community about an asset.
Okay, that's great, thanks. And my final point, so it's under Appendix 1. It's just I'm looking for a bit of detail on the last item on there, which just says complete on site. I just didn't understand what that's referring to.
What one's that, sorry, Councillor?
It's in the Appendix 1, last line. It's 26,000 is the cost.
Convener, that line is just there for any residual funding from projects that were reported complete on site in previous cycles. So, and they may not have their final accounts signed off as yet. So that funding is still potentially to be called upon. It's not a live project as such, just a balance.
Okay, so that's your rainy day fund then.
Well, unless final accounts are not agreed within what we expect them to be, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
James?
Thanks, convener. It's just around 3.13 again, asset transfer, specifically around the potential transfer of Blackfield Community Hall to Youth Connections. So firstly, I just wanted to say it's really welcome and I really support that. Youth Connections is a really well-run organisation in Blackfield, and to potentially have them run the community hall is a great idea. Having spoke to Alec, who runs Youth Connections, he's made it really clear that he's got big plans for using the hall. Not only is he going to really bring it to life, open it up 7 days, have lots of different classes, parties, revenue making initiatives, but there's also potential that he's going to generate 4 new jobs for Blackfield as well, or 4 new jobs. So that's really welcome and I really support that. I have a question though on it. Do you have an update on progress of that potential transfer?
Yeah, for yourself, convener. We're still in discussions with Inverclyde, sorry, with Youth Connections regarding that, but also with the stakeholders who are already within the facility. That is actually a managed facility on behalf of Inverclyde Leisure. So we're going through that whole process at the moment, looking at all community centres, as you're aware. And obviously Alec has made a verbal and right now written confirmation about his interest in taking that over. So we're starting to consider that whole thing and relevant to the outcomes of an asset transfer. But we also need to start to continue to speak to other stakeholders. And my understanding there is someone else interested in that asset. So we need to have that conversation and we'll continue to look at that and bring it back to committee.
Thanks, that's great.
Elizabeth?
Thanks, Kira. So my questions are about the movable floor. It's a comment and question really. I've said previously, I'm continually disappointed that this is still a live issue. It's been an issue for most of my first term as a councillor and now a year into my second term. And I do worry we've been asked today to make a decision moving it from a loan to Inverclyde Leisure to a grant to Inverclyde Leisure. And I worry that it's just going to degrade to the point where we've put money towards this that then either isn't spent or is used up, and we still don't have a movable floor in the waterfront. So that's the kind of concern that I've got, and I have to keep raising it because I'm so frustrated with this not being closed off as an action. No, there's no question. My next thing is a request, actually, if it's all right to put forward when people who are board members or who are engaging with Inverclyde Leisure, and this is in the hope that we do get this resolved and we do get the movable floor. There are clearly user groups who no longer are able to use, or at the moment are not able to use the waterfront because the floor isn't suitable for them. So for now, a considerable period of time, they've had to move and make provisions to do what they do elsewhere. And I think we need to be massively intentional in making sure that we market and we schmooze and we, deal with people in such a way that we coax them back in to use the facility fixed. Because we've got people who now for several years have had to make plan B arrangements, and they're probably quite in a routine with their plan B arrangements, and I need them to have a plan A, or we need them to have a plan A that means coming back to using the waterfront again.
I'm going to let Eddie, can you maybe comment on, obviously what we're at here is a financial movement to change something from a loan to a grant, but can you maybe do your best to allay Elizabeth's concerns that this is not going to cause any further delays, and how far along are we with regard to, I believe it's a sole tender for the movable floor?
Yeah, through you, convener. The funding change here makes no difference to the fact that we've actually committed to a contract and there has been a formal legal acceptance issued to a contractor, and we confirmed that at the last committee as well. The project isn't a straightforward one. That there is a limited pool of contractors to tender to, but we have one of those on board, and it's a case of working through the detail with that contractor and the specialist subcontractor to get it to where it needs to go, and that's what we're currently doing. So there is a formally legally committed contract, and this funding change doesn't make any difference to that.
Okay, can I go to Hugh next about Elizabeth's other point about organisations and clubs that have now probably moved elsewhere? How do we make sure they come back once the movable floor is done? That'll come into yourself, Hugh.
Yeah, thanks very much, Convener. It's a very critical point. We are working very closely with Humbercow Leisure to try and make sure that stakeholders understand the delay that we're found with the mobile floor. It's key as soon as we've got a timescale that we communicate that to the user groups and people who are not using the pool. Our key engagement with Humbercow Leisure is to make sure as soon as we have got a fit for purpose new pool that everybody's invited back and more engagement around them. But as Eddie says, it's quite a tricky replacement, and the timescale is taking longer than expected. But we are working very closely with Humbercow Leisure, continue to make a communication with these users who cannot use it at the moment to give them an update of where we are. But we continue to have a monthly meetings on the agenda.
Okay, thanks you. Elizabeth Starkey. Tommy?
Yep, thanks, Convener. My question very simple to Councillor Laws regarding the King George V building for Glasgow. We were concerned to see there's some issues in there, but also pleased to learn that officers have contingencies in place. So hopefully things will go well. I look forward to further reports due course.
Okay. If anything else, I'm actually for Mark.
Thanks, Convener. Can I just also ask a question about the movable floor at the waterfront? I'm just keen, obviously, Humbercow Leisure are in the middle of a consultation on service changes at the moment, and I'm just keen to understand if this is now going to be a grant and not a loan, what will the impact of that be on IL's revenue? Will there be any impact on IL's revenue? Like how are they going to account for this? Was there going to be interest payable? Will it make a discernible difference in their accounts now that it's out?
I don't know if Tony wants to take that one, Tony, or Ruth.
I can take it if you want.
Oh, whoever.
Just Councillor, on the loan processes, we were always all in discussion with Humbercow Leisure about how this would be funded. It's only a percentage of the actual overall budget. And what we've now agreed is that due to the loan and the critical situation that IL find yourself in with the cost of living and things like that, it would be better not to have a loan. So what we've now agreed is a grant towards it. And at the moment, we were working closely with our legal team to see what that means. But there was a payment agreed in principle with Humbercow Leisure board about how they would pay that loan back to us over a period of time. They still have some capital money to go towards the overall budget to help with the overall cost of it. I think it's around about £40,000 towards that. So we are working closely with them, but we are very aware of the situation that Humbercow Leisure finds herself in the moment, and we'll continue to work with them on it.
And from that, I assume that we pay Humbercow Leisure a fee, so any loan would have just come off that fee before we
any loan would just have been an agreed loan.
Transaction type of thing. With one comment?
Yeah, just to come in, President Husky, it would make very little difference to their bottom line because it's from the management fee they'll be paying us back the loan. So it's fairly negligible for the situation going forward. So if this is the answer to perhaps them being in a different financial situation going forward, no, that it is negligible.
Yeah. And again, with very briefly on the recommendation, it says it's going to full council. That's just to sort of navigate the need to go to policy resources. So
you're not getting an answer.
I'm going to double check that. I can't remember if it's on policy resources or full council, but I'll get back to double check.
Okay, so right. Okay.
Yes, it's a movable recommendation.
Right, okay. I can check online. No comments online. Any other comments from members? If not, can we agree the recommendation at point 2.1 at point 2 and 2.1? Can we look to get the clarification that goes to full council fine, it's as per recommendation. If it's got to go through policy legislation first, can you amend the recommendation to put it to policy legislation?
Agreed.
Thank you for that. We can move to agenda item number 4, which was just a communities update. on national issues, national local initiatives. Bonnie, you want to start off on that?
Thanks very much, Convener. So this report gives members an update on a number of matters across the cultural side of the service. So we provided updates on some of the successes around the Culture Collective. There was an outstanding remit in relation to the What Institution electronic donations, so we've looked into that and we've provided an update in the paper in relation to that. Also note a very generous donation from Dr. Daniel Temianka, who's son of Dr. Henry Temianka. He's provided some donations before to the What Institution. He was delighted to help with the creation of the creativity space. So it was just to note and to thank Dr. Temianka for sending that donation through. We've also given an update on some of the awards that the library service continue to achieve, and also an element of active school success in the report that got a high percentage of participation with active schools. In fact, the highest in Scotland. We've been told by at 48% of the school population, in fact, engaging in extracurricular activities through last year. So that's a real success story for active schools. Also for noting, Clyde Conversations report, we provided links for that, and the report has already been agreed by the Alliance Board and also the Strategic Community Learning and Development 3-year plan. So this is the wider strategic plan for CLD, not just the CLD service. Also provided just an update on I suppose a pilot thing that we are going through with the Scottish Government just now, last till March, and that's about piloting affordable childcare, and that's based in a hub at Newark Primary School, and that's just got up and running, and this will help inform the Scottish Government's approach to affordable childcare when they roll this out. And lastly, in terms of talking about this earlier, but looking at there's been a request made by Inverclyde Leisure Board that we reflect what the council has done and pay the national living wage to their employees. And the board has put a formal request to the Chief Executive for the council to consider an additional one-off payment of £77,000 in order that their staff can be paid at the same time as the council in terms of the national living wage from the 1st of January. And it's recommended that the committee agrees to remit this request to the Policy and Resources Committee. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Okay, I've got this time I've looked between who put a light on first. I'll have Francesca and then Elizabeth and then Kirsty.
Thanks very much, Convener. So I've got 3 things similar to Councillor Quinn at the last item. So one's a comment and 2 are questions, so I'll just go through them if that's okay. So first was in 3.3, just I've said it before at full council, and I know it's been noted here, just a huge thanks as a board member about that really generous donation. I've seen the creativity space at the What Institution, and I know that a lot of families in my wards have made great use of it already, so it's really, really welcome. Dr. Temianka also has links with some of the work that's been done at Greenock Cemetery that I've mentioned before too, and a man, Sammy Stein, has been doing a lot of work there fundraising to restore some of the graves that I think Dr. Temianka's grandfather would have been in contact with the people who are buried there. So I know I've said it before, but I'm sure that if Dr. Temianka is ever making it over to Greenock to see the creativity space, I'm sure that myself and Councillor Robertson and Councillor Clougherty would love to welcome him there to have a good look and show him the section of the cemetery. So the next thing is about Clyde Conversations. So I've read the report that went to the Alliance Board. That was excellent and so much wonderful work going on there. I wondered if there were opportunities. There's so much in those conversations, any opportunities for us to work with those young people for further engagement and maybe even expand the scope of the work that's going on.
for example, their voices being used in consultations like the budget consultation, the Inverclyde Leisure consultation, any policy development that we're doing. So I thought it would be good to get some more information, not necessarily here, but at future points about any way we could expand on that. And then lastly, just on 3.8, the early adopter affordable childcare. Now, that's a kind of new take on early adoption, and I'm thinking that Robert Owen and New Lanark in 1816 would have been looking at childcare to allow parents to get into work. And now we're here in 2023 looking at this. So I would say it's a bit of a misnomer, and I know it says in here that it's short-term funding from the Scottish Government, and I think it's worth noting that it's very welcome and really, really important to look at affordable childcare to allow parents to be working and to really engage fully in economic and independent life. But there's a considerable amount of work and effort from officers in sourcing this pilot, securing it for Inverclyde, and then what happens next. You know, it's lasted until the 31st of March, only a couple of months away. So I think we'll follow it very closely, and I'd also like to request a paper just at what is the picture of childcare and after school care now across Inverclyde, looking specifically at what families want, what are the barriers to them accessing childcare, and also who are the providers, what that picture looks like. So I think the pilot is great, it's good to have it, but there are obviously issues with pilots, and it'd be good to see what's happening all the way across Inverclyde.
Okay, thanks, Francesca. I'll let Tony, you want to come in, obviously with regard to the kind donation we've got. I assume that we write back and put our thanks in writing to them as well. I can see Ruth want to come in, Matt. Or Ruth written. Okay, right, thanks, Ruth. And the other 2 points on Clyde conversations, either Tony or if Hugh wants to take that up. And the final point, Tony, if you want to go ahead with that.
Okay, so the Clyde conversations, yeah, we will be using a lot of the information that we got from that to inform the Children's Services Plan going forward, and we are looking at a way of improving our, I suppose, formalising the consultation for young people into a lot of the I suppose not the affairs of, but looking at council policies and also the Alliance Board as well, because we have a number of groups. We have Clyde conversations. We also have an education-based group as well, and Ruth and Michael meet with groups of young people. So it's trying to gather all of their voices together and help them be represented and also to inform council policy going forward. So it's definitely something that we did get a lot of information from young people, and we will be using that going forward as well, and certainly to feed back again to the young people when we do the next one, to show them what we've done so far. In fact, we've actually moved on quite a lot of the recommendations already, and we have communicated that back to the young people. So when we do Clyde conversations, it will certainly open with what we've done so far to try and encourage it. In terms of the last question in respect of the early adopter, although we don't have confirmation of funding, we have kind of a letter of comfort, I suppose, from the Scottish Government that this will extend for another period of time, hopefully up to a year, but we will definitely bring back more information to the committee so that they can see once the pilot has run, because we will then have a picture of what childcare looks like in the area, and also the impact of the initiative itself.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Ruth, would you want to comment?
Yes, just to follow up on a couple of points. Temianka was just leader of the Scottish Orchestra, and the RSNO came back for the first time to the Beacon to celebrate the 10th birthday. So there's a nice little link there with the Temianka family. And yes, I have formally requested, formally written to them by post, I would have to say, to thank them, and very, very welcome and good contacts to have. The engagement with the young people, it can be difficult. Previously, we have engaged with them through focus groups on the budget process. And the trick is making it meaningful for the young people so that they can give us meaningful information back when we looked at the prioritisation. Remember when the budget process prioritised, the young people did prioritise, but it's, of course they're going to look through their own lens, look at the schools areas. This time it's been very difficult to translate it for young people, and so we will continue to do that. And also from memory, I think we were looking at members of the Scottish Youth Parliament being representative on certainly the Alliance Board. And the last point about the early adopter, absolutely happy to bring a paper back on childcare. And it can be difficult to articulate what's happening in Inverclyde because some of the providers are no longer there because there was no uptake, and then we're looking to increase uptake. And in my own opinion, what parents need is certainty as to what's available, because then they can make choices on the back of that. So that is perhaps one where temporary funding is a difficult one. Now it's very, very welcomed, and we absolutely see the pathfinder. But if you're a parent looking for potential jobs in the future, you need to know what's guaranteed behind it. And part of the issue with perhaps attendance at after school is linked to the active schools part of this, where we have after school clubs that some parents do sometimes use, and that'll just give an hour buffer. So just to build on my colleagues' answers.
And then just at the end, we'll make sure we get a report at the end when we're doing the recommendations. Francesca, just remind me. Can I have Liz and then Kirsty and then Natasha, Liz?
Thanks, Camilla. As Ruth mentioned the RSN, I'm just going to let you all know that I have updated my CV. The RSNO conductor turned down from the orchestra last week and conducted the audience clapping along. I was conducted by the conductor of the RSNO, therefore I have performed the RSNO. Just saying. So I do want to associate myself with what Francesca said about the Temianka donation. I just think it's incredible that this family have not only made the contact and the connection with us within Inverclyde, but they're really sustaining it. They're really literally putting their money where their mouth is, and also just the regard that I know they hold the area in as well is so great. So I'd absolutely associate myself with what Francesca said. The other point I want to make is also about the Pathfinder, the early adopter Pathfinder. Can I just ask when we actually found out that we were getting the funding? Because it does seem quite unfortunate that Hammies had to go to the wall and then all of a sudden this is here. I think it would be remiss not to kind of mention that there was quite an established out of school provision in Port Glasgow area, and a number of families were using it, but there wasn't funding for that, and now we do have funding, albeit from Scottish Government, and I don't know what the timing is. That's what I guess the point of my question. But it's a shame that it hasn't worked out in terms of sustaining the established provision that was Hammies.
You want to comment?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically we looked at previously the holiday clubs and the targeted childcare, and we've got a very good anti-poverty officer with very good relationships with the Scottish Government. Hence they wanted to use us as a pathfinder. My understanding, and Hugh will correct me on this, is it was very, very late in the day. We had to work very, very quickly. So even to get it started in January, I'm thinking it was as late as November we found out. Hugh's not in, so it was a very quick turnaround. And from my information is that the Scottish Government are using us to learn lessons. They learned a lot of lessons from our experience with the holiday clubs about people who would access, who wouldn't access, and the way to run that and how to run it inclusively as well. So there's a team in the Scottish Government working on this, but the funding was very late in the day and would not have stopped what was going to happen with Hammies. But I absolutely get the point that it just seems that the timing has been inside.
And I guess we are happy to be used as guinea pigs to the Scottish Government as long as they give us the money in order to do that. So that's what I'm saying. Yep. Kirsty?
Thank you. I would just like to talk about section 3.2 with regards to the electronic donations at the Water Institution. I noticed obviously that the card machine's up and running now, which is great. One thing I think is missing is what sort of income they're generating from the shop in particular, like the items on sale. to see if there's ways of improving the offerings that maybe what the kids that enter maybe want to buy a wee toy at £1 or something. But secondly, with the actual sort of electronic donation system being having to go to the till to say to the person, can I donate electronically, takes away the convenience of it, and also people could feel judged or embarrassed about the amounts that they can donate, so they're not going to potentially go up and say, oh, can I put £1 on my card here to donate to you. I think because they've not had any donations whatsoever, including any cash also, it maybe should be looked at where the donation point is. I know from when I've been in, it's not always really noticeable when you're walking around, so if you put it in a more prominent position, it may encourage more donations.
Okay. Ruth, I can see you going for your budget, Tony.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's something we need to weigh up. It's just, would the cost of the rental actually exceed the cost of the donations? And we've looked at some smaller provisions across the country, and it's something that we need to weigh up. I absolutely accept your point. If we need to advertise it more, then we will. And we have had some issues with the existing card system, which I'm hoping we should have resolved. So I'll take your points on board, and I will look at the advertising of it at the museum and see if we can encourage people to donate. We'll look at the messaging as they come in.
And Tony, Kirsty's other point, I think we are showing a deficit with regard to the shop, and I think that was probably highlighted earlier on in the report. Would that be fair to say that we're not producing, or we're not getting as many sales as expected through the shops?
Yeah. The shop is very much focused on certainly some books and some other items, and yeah, we will look into the other things that kids quite like to pick up, and I have spoken to Anna before about that, and we will look into, I suppose, expanding the offer to try and get the income in. But now that we've got the card machine up and running, hopefully that will help that.
Okay, Kirsty. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ruth, if you want to comment, it'll be fine. I'm going to bring Natasha in, and then Pam. Natasha.
Thanks, Kevin. I've got a couple of comments and a couple of questions. So first of all, just want to say, really happy that the Watt Institution does have some sort of method set up. I think it's just about, as I think it was Kirsty said, making sure that we're destigmatising no matter what the amount. Just want to say thank you to Dr. Tamieka. Sorry if I've said that wrong. And I was going to ask how we written to, but Ruth's already answered that one. And then a huge congratulations to Inverclyde Libraries for winning the Slick Awards. I think it's things like this that show that our librarian service really is going above and beyond to provide the best they can for the community, and I'm excited to see what the SLIF Award's going to bring. My two questions, I've had a couple more questions already asked and answered, but one of them was just around, for the Culture Collective, are we going to have a report back outlining how the money's been spent? So I think it was £6 million. And kind of the outcomes that have been achieved and the difference it's made tangibly to our communities. And my other question was around the 3.8, the early adopter affordable childcare. I can see here that we're saying that we won't charge children that travel more than 1 mile, but isn't that creating an unfair disadvantage to those children who don't happen to go to Newark Primary? And did we consider how much it would cost for us to actually just pay for the transport of all children to that out of school care? I can appreciate with the budget pressures that we're under at the moment that might not be possible.
Okay, Ruth. I'll take these. Ruth.
Yes, I can come in on the first one with the Culture Collective. Absolutely, we are responsible for reporting back on that, and that is part of the Arts and Heritage Strategy that goes through the Grants Board. But the Culture Collective is tightly monitored by the funders, so I can circulate the reports as to how many jobs have brought in and the types of projects that have taken forward. On the second point about the early adopter, we had to go somewhere. We always know when you pick somewhere, there'll be other places that don't get. And the opinion was linked to hands and where there was the biggest need is that we would start off in Port Glasgow because that's where we were aware of was the biggest need. What I would say is the transportation of young people can be difficult because you're then requiring people who are escorting the young people as well. So we looked at the numbers and Port Glasgow seemed the most sensible place.
Is that okay, Natasha?
Yeah, thank you for answering that. It wasn't about the location in Port Glasgow, it's more so just for some families having to transport to Newark versus other ones. You've given me an answer, thank you.
Okay, right, fine.
Thanks, Convener. I have a question in relation to 3.7, Community Learning and Development 3-year plan, and it's whether we need to make any amendments or enhancements in relation to an aspect of civic and cultural life that's not changing as we had hoped and anticipated. I don't know if anyone else has had representation from our trans community, but I have, and the person has issues with particular agencies, which of course I am following up. But the more general point about the lack of advice and support locally, I'm certainly very dismayed about. The mantra "Go to Glasgow" is just not good enough, and this is a group who are vulnerable and marginalised and under particular scrutiny and pressure at the present time. And so my question is, do we think that what we have in our plan is sufficient? Should it be re-looked at? Thank you.
Hugh?
For yourself, Convener, I think within our plan at the present moment, we look at everything on a yearly basis, so we can adapt if we think we need to adapt. I think within the services that we support our trans residences is strong for young people. I think there is a probably gap from some adults that we've probably travelled to Glasgow, and I don't dispute that, but we are looking at everything as we move forward, and we're quite happy to have any conversations with any residents about any issues that we've got, and we can maybe look at that more in depth.
Yes, thank you very much, because I think the issue it involves individuals and involves families and partners, individuals, partners and families. So yes, I very much welcome the opportunity to have a further discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. I can't see any members online and nobody in the room. Can we go to the recommendations? And obviously the main recommendation from us is to note the report, also to remit the right living wage to the Policy and Resources Committee. Can we agree on that?
Thank you.
Thank you. And we move to the next agenda item, which is like a dagger through my heart. It's the proposed indoor tennis facility. Corey.
Thanks very much, Convener. This report provides committee with an update on the current position in relation to the indoor tennis centre. However, the recommendation is that given the financial pressures that the council are under, the question over the funding on the specific site at Rankin Park, the increased costs associated with the project, and also the facility proposed in terms of its revenue, that it was going to run at a loss for a couple of years. That was extended, that the recommendation for committee to now cancel the project. Just to, I suppose, reassure committee that relationships remain still very strong between ourselves and Sports Scotland and also the Lawn Tennis Association, and I think there is an understanding and appreciation by them when we have been discussing this, that the council was going to be in a difficult position given the increased costs. So I won't go through the entire report, but I'd be happy to take any questions that any member might have.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Tommy, you first.
Thanks, convener. I was going to say, when I was thinking that this is a good report, but that's probably not the terminology used for this one. I think it's very informative and it does detail the issues we've had with the project and also the issues we're going to continue to have with the project, getting what type of jobs are going to be, cost certainty on it. And this started in 2019 with a budget of £1.5 million, and we've seen figures in the report that could go as high as £3.6 million. So the question for myself and for the committee is, can we justify spending this money in the current climate as a council with the challenges we're facing? And also from an Inverclyde Leisure point of view, again, spending this money when there's proposals on the table to perhaps close the Port Glasgow pool or Ravenscraig Stadium or cut back the others, Gourock pool as well. So all sorts of challenges, all sorts of things to consider. For me, Ward 7 is my ward. It would be a great facility for the ward. It would be a great facility for Inverclyde as a whole. But I think, on balance, and taking everything into account, with some regret, I think I have to agree with the recommendation that's came from officers. I think we have to face the financial realities of what's in front of us, and it's with regret that I support the officer's decision.
Okay, thanks, Tommy. Now bring your ward colleague in next, Natasha. Natasha, you want to comment?
Yes, thank you, Jim. I'm going to comment rather than ask any questions. Can you hear me okay? You look like you're struggling to hear me. Okay. So I just want to say, like, as many of us around the table, I'm actually quite deeply disappointed that after, I think it's 5-6 years from the start of our conversations that we've been working on this as a council, and after all the planning collaboration with the funding partners, the community partners, it's quite disappointing to know that this won't go ahead. Kind of what Tommy said as well there, this was going to be a facility for Inverclyde, but based within my ward, within Ward 7, and it was going to offer something different. It was going to offer year-round tennis along with affordable tennis. At the moment, there is still that gap in the market for access for everyday people that maybe can't afford a yearly membership or maybe don't have the time to utilise it several times a week. So this was going to really close that financial gap for people being able to access tennis. And I know this isn't a unique position for our local authority either. Like, most of the Tennis Scotland projects, I believe, haven't proceeded. I think only one so far has managed to proceed, but that's little help for us right now. And it's begrudgingly that I do accept the recommendations from the officers. I think they're robust, I think they're concise. I understand it's a cocktail of COVID impacts, the increase in building costs and inflation, and laterally the council budget pressures that we're all aware of. So with us having to prioritise so carefully, I think it's only prudent for us to begrudgingly cancel this project. If there was any further funding on the table, if anything substantially changed with terms of settlement, we might be making a slightly different decision today. But I think in the current climate that unfortunately we just can't support something like this. So I just want to say thank you to all the officers and all the people in the room right now who have worked on it, and all our community partners that have worked on it, because hopefully one day we might be able to do something similar to this. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thanks, Natasha. Is there any other comments? It just, I mean, obviously, I've been deeply involved in this project since day one, and really, it pains me, but I understand fully the reasons, and it's really not to point blame at anybody. It goes back to Elizabeth was saying about some of the projects that we've looked at and moving before, Lady Alice Bowling Club, that have been going on for a long time, and we finally see the light at the end of the tunnel with a lot of these. Unfortunately, all we can see at the end of the tunnel is the gap with regardless. You know, the sustainability of what was called into question, and the amount of time and effort our officers and even elected members have spent with us. It was a project that we really did want to see come off the ground, but I think we'll just want to accept it. Given the current climate, the recommendations from officers, unless something comes in out the blue. I know that blame was on to Steve McCabe. I was hoping Ruth was going to tell me this morning, Jim, Tennis Scotland has given us another £10 million to suit this project, but they've not given us that call, so I don't think we have any option but to agree to the recommendations unless anybody else is very.
Agreed.
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 Thank you. And can we go on to Documents money, it's item number 11, 6, and it's the implications Holocaust Memorial Day, and it's a request from Councillor Klusky. Martin, you want to speak to this?
Yep, sure. Thanks, convener, and thanks to both the committee and the convener for agreeing to take this motion members' request today. The request does three things. It's fairly self-explanatory. First, it provides us as a committee and hopefully the whole council with an opportunity to take a moment to mark Holocaust Memorial Day. Most of you will be aware, but Holocaust Memorial Day is marked on the 27th of January, so that's going to be this coming Friday. It's marked each year to remember the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust, the victims of other Nazi persecution, including communities like disabled people, LGBT people, and the Gypsy and Roma community. And also the victims of other genocides in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur more recently. Second thing it does is allow us just to briefly pay tribute to the work of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, who organise and mark this day in the UK every year. I was proud to be a trustee of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust for 6 years until a few years ago. And this year the organisation hopes to have thousands of events across the country. And this year's theme, as it says in the members' request, is ordinary people, which encourages us, every year there's a different theme, and this year ordinary people is to encourage us to think about the role of ordinary people in both facilitating and also stopping acts of genocide and discrimination. And finally, the request asks the committee to take some action, for the council to take some action, firstly to encourage organisations and individuals to participate in the Light the Darkness event from 4 PM on Friday, where they're asking organisations to light up buildings in purple, and individuals to put a candle in their window and share it on social media. And it also requests that officers consider how we might want to mark Holocaust Memorial Day as a council in future years. So I'm grateful for this opportunity, and hopefully the committee will be minded to accept the request. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Any other comments?
Freemason.
Can we agree with Martin's request and get detailed on that? Okay. Just before I end this, I just want a couple of things of clarification. Food bank sharing, I think basically obviously Francesca mentioned during her question about getting a childcare report. I said I was going to put it in the recommendations. I didn't. Can Ruth agree that we will do a report back and if Francesca agrees to that we know what's going to happen? And also I raised the question about whether it should go to PNR or council. Do you want to maybe clarify it?
Yes, the clarification is just in the PNR report. You didn't have mentioned that it created and it didn't change in the recommendations. So for clarification, it will go to PNR rather than both.
Okay. And with that, can I look forward to seeing you all back at the report? Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.